Welcome back, guys, to the Beyond Condition podcast, the voice of bodybuilding. And today I am here flying solo for an episode to talk about some of the things that are coming up for the podcast and also some reflections I've had personally from recording episodes, from being able to listen to the guests. And essentially, every time I record a podcast, I pick up little almost nuggets of information of certain sentences that are discussed on episodes, and it sits with me. And as you can imagine, of course, some of the guests I get on, let's face it, they're well-known people in the bodybuilding space. And of course, that brings an element of, I don't know where the conversations are going to go. And I don't really know where it came from being able to host a podcast and feeling that it is my home. It's something that I absolutely love. And the compliments I get from the guests to say how I lead the conversation and how it's always interesting to podcast with me. It truly means a lot to me. And as I say, I don't really know where it came from, but certainly for me, the intuitive mind that I have, I feel is probably shared by quite a lot of bodybuilders. Because if you're in this sport, if you're part of this lifestyle for a long period of time, what's going to keep you going? And a lot of the time, it's something we maybe miss in our own character, that actually it's because we're intuitive. We want to know what's possible. And that is the art of bodybuilding. We are building our bodies. But then, of course, we are also building our mind, our character, and learning ourselves. And tomorrow, you're going to hear of an episode with a friend of mine, Lewis, who actually approached me about coming on the podcast to talk about his story of childhood abuse. And this is what has sparked this episode today. But also, like I say, many of the conversations I have with the guests, but also combined with the conversations I then have with you guys from things that you've heard on the podcast and things that you want to explore more. And you'll see by the title of this episode, Trauma Starts with You. Now, what does that mean, right? If we go through something traumatic in life, that's not me saying it's our fault, but it starts with us because it's us that experiences the trauma. And something that I'm very passionate to make clear as a message in all of the podcast episodes is that anything that I have faced, anything that any of the guests have faced, the thing is, right, the level, the scale of which you find something traumatic is going to be individual to you. So something could happen to me, something could happen to 10 other people. The same thing could happen, but we could all tolerate it in a different way. It could leave an impact in a different way. And that's because we are all individuals. We're all raised differently. We all experience things differently. And we also have our own personality traits, our own character. And that's important to remember because when we hear of other people's stories, when you hear the episode tomorrow, it's it's a story that many of us can't even contemplate happening. And these things happen. These things happen every day to people of all walks of life, trauma, abuse, all of these things that leave their mark. But we don't hear about these things, right? Unless you know someone, or maybe you see it in the news, etc. And as I say, trauma is unique to you. But something that I picked up from tomorrow's episode is that Lewis asked me, what plant grows the most? The one in dark or the one in light? And I was like, oh, the one in light. And then he was like, no, the one you water the most. And that stuck with me It really has stuck with me since recording because it's so true. Because in darkness, if we still water ourselves to grow, if we still take lessons in those dark periods of life, it leads to potentially life-changing things. It leads us on our path. And I always think back to, when I am facing a challenge, what can I learn from this? And then it could be months, it could be years after where I go, okay, that's why it happened. That's what I've gained from this experience. Although at the time it's been horrendous, I now know why this happened to me. And I actually did some stories about this yesterday about my knee surgery and going to Thailand. Part of the reason to go there was to find treatment for my chronic back pain. And the chronic back pain that I've personally faced, it's something that I do talk about, as you know, if you listen to the episodes, but for years and years and years, you wouldn't know. You literally wouldn't know that there was anything wrong unless you watched me move, unless you watched me day to day, struggling to get up and down, struggling to lift weight plates onto the bits of kit, but then still training and pushing myself and doing what I need to do. You know, this example, I personally feel, relates to anyone that faces challenges in the bodybuilding, the phases we go through, the journey. People don't see what we go through behind closed doors. And that doesn't mean literally just at home behind the door. That means what we go through physically and psychologically. When we're pushing ourselves to the extremes in any of the phases, who's there to show up? You are. And yes, we have a coach, or maybe you coach yourself, but generally speaking, you share this journey with a coach. And I myself, as a coach, I want to be there every step of the way for all of my clients. And hopefully you have that relationship with your coach. But ultimately, it's you doing the work. The times when you can hardly put one foot in front of the other, the times where you're so fatigued, you're so fucked, but it's the work you have to do. Who's there? You are. And a lot of the trauma that we do face in life can lead to a very successful bodybuilder. And if we actually look at this, right, how do we put ourselves through all of these phases? How do we execute like we do? A lot of the time, it's because we've been through so much shit that bodybuilding actually, it could be that you find the challenge of bodybuilding in itself welcomed, a privilege, and that this is my thought process. The choice to be a bodybuilder far supersedes a lot of the choices I've made in my life. And those choices in a young adult mind, in a child's mind, a lot of the choices, I could look back and go, what the fucking hell was I doing? The periods of time of being, alcohol, drugs, the things that I've been through to get where I am today. A lot of those things, they've led me here today to be the person I am. And do I need to see those as a negative, or do I see the traumatic events that have happened off the back of these periods of time, under the influence, as it were, and not knowing who I was, and in these social environments of pressure, all of these things amongst this time, and not always under the influence, being in a marriage for a number of years and being in a partnership for all those years where I was so incredibly unhappy. Why were those things happening to me? What did I do to deserve so much pain from my whole life, which has essentially changed in the last, 2.5 years or so? Why were these things happening to me? Why would I go from one scenario to another scenario to another scenario? Pain, pain, more pain. Why did these things happen? Why did I have a car crash when I was 17 and ended up with chronic back pain? And I sit here today with degenerative discs that cause me pain pretty much every day. Why? Why is that? Why do I have to put up with this? Because that's life. That is life. Life is tough. And I remember Rob Latty came on the pod once and he said, once you realize that life is hard, it becomes easier. And that, again, something that stuck with me because we never ever really know day to day what's going to happen. We absolutely do not. There are so many things that are out of our control. And that leads into, again, another reason why me, maybe you who is listening, that has been through trauma in life, what drives us to be the best bodybuilders we can? What pulls us into the bodybuilding lifestyle to execute daily, to find no trouble in executing daily? Because we can control that. And that's certainly something I think is huge, huge in the bodybuilding space. I can control what I eat. I can control what training I do. I can control the steps I do. I can control my routine, all of these things. But what I feel is then important to talk about, and it's something I do, and if I'm being honest, I do struggle with it myself. And this is what it is, being honest and transparent. When I don't have my normal routine, when those things I've just listed aren't in my control, it's hard for me. It's very hard. Uncertainty is not a good space for me to be in personally. And I'm sure many of you are going to be listening going, yeah, I fucking I hate that. I hate the lack of control. And this is where challenging our narrative and challenging ourselves in the times where we don't have control, when we then do go back to having everything in control, having our ducks in a line, having our bodybuilding lifestyle, this is something I talk to clients about. It renews and refreshes that focus to do what we do on a day-to-day basis and be incredibly grateful for that. But what I would say is that these elements of control and the things that we do have that consideration for many of us for that to become out of control. And how does that work, right? What do I mean? And that's when we verge on the obsessive nature that comes from bodybuilding and what that can do to your mind. And it would be easy for me to sit here and say, you need to minimize your stress. Everything is a positive. You need to be able to enjoy every part of this. But at times, and there's a difference here between moaning and it being hard, it's hard what we're doing, guys. You can't quantify how you feel. You don't know what words are going to describe how you feel. And this can relate to all different phases, right? This can be in the depths of prep. This can be reversing out. This could be an off season. All of the phases we go through, we're going to face these psychological challenges. And is that ever going to go away, right? Is it ever going to go away because we care so much about what we're doing? And then it's that decision within ourselves. How do we get that joy in the purpose, no matter what we're facing? And this is where, when you've been through trauma, when you've been through certain challenges in life, bodybuilding can be such a positive for you. It can literally feel like it saved your life. And I'll often reference this. Bodybuilding can save your life, but you find bodybuilding actually it's you that saves your life. It's you that saves yourself. But how do we deal with these psychological changes and hormonal adaptations as bodybuilders to stay in a good mindset, to stay in a frame of mind that is objective? Because we all know, right? When we're getting close to a show, psychologically, there's a lot going on in our minds as to bringing our best on that day. There's a lot that lays on it. There's a hell of a lot. If you really care about, what you look like, your performance, your show day. Maybe you're competing and you just want to turn up, experience the show, and that's your goal. But for a lot of us, it's not just the prep guys, it's off season, it's maybe previous seasons, it's all of this that equates to one day. And this is what is so fucking brutal about bodybuilding, I think. It's that you can spend 3 years, a couple of years in an off season, maybe a bit more, go into a prep. That could equate to years of your life. And you may step on stage once, you may step on stage a few times. Then what? Yeah. Okay. Now I need to be able to reverse out, go into off season and do it all again. And no matter what the placing is, a lot of the time, and this is genuinely, when we look at what competitive bodybuilding is, we're looking to get better. Do we actually ever get a moment to stop and go, what did I learn from that season? How did I feel competing? Is this for me? Do I want to commit my life to it? What drives me? What is my why? Is this sport what gets me out of bed in the morning? Is bodybuilding my life? Because well and truly, we get one life. We get one life, right? And the days go quick, the weeks go quick, the months go quick. Even for me, sitting here right now, I'm 2 years into off season. It has flown by. Like it literally feels like I stepped on stage not very long ago, and it's 2 years. But during that time, yes, the surgery, the back pain, etc., that I've mentioned, have I learnt and have I enjoyed it? The honest answer is yes. And this is where we feed into what we can gain from trauma, what we can gain from challenges. We can enjoy the challenges we face. When I got told I needed the knee surgery, I had 3 days to process that I wouldn't be able to walk for months. I wouldn't be able to train for months. Now, to me, a big part of that is that I've trained for 12 years, right? I've trained when I probably shouldn't have trained. I've never ever gone that long without training being there. And it's like, shit, that's my identity, right? I'm Sarah, I'm a bodybuilder. What the fuck does this look like? But this is again where we can go, how do I reframe this? How do I continue on my quest and do my best? Because this is literally all we can do. We can only ever do our best. And I mentioned this on the pod with Stan Efferding that goes live in week after next. You can have a bit of fun with it almost, right? So in the example of my surgery, I started doing things like, I sellotape some hooks onto my crutches and then I'd like put a little bag on there and I'd carry my protein and my meal in the bag and I'd hop across the floor and like these weird and wonderful things. And I started to be able to progress my rehab exercises and I'd get into my routine. So it was so far from my normal routine, but I'd have my meal one. And then I'd be like, right, so rehab session one. Okay, so then what can I do? I can do some education. On days where I'm working, I'll do my check-ins as I normally would, have my meal. Then I would do my rehab. Then I would, okay, so what can I do here? Maybe I do some work. And we can fill the day with things that ignite our passion, that continue helping us develop as athletes or as coaches or both. And it's in the reframing of this is the scenario that has happened. What do I do about it? I control what I can. Because if I spent 2 months just feeling sorry for myself, would I be where I am now, being able to pretty much load both of my legs evenly, being able to do check-ins, being able to get my heels on, which I couldn't do for months and months and months. Because would I have done the rehab? Would I have had an excuse to get out of bed just to walk downstairs? Because it seems so silly in some regards, but to get from upstairs in bed to get down 2 flights of stairs to get to the sofa, that would take me like 25 minutes. And what have I done? Fuck all. But what I have done is get out of bed and not allow myself to give up. And it's quite upsetting actually when I think about it, because when I actually think of how hard that is to have your whole life removed, and at times, even though I've got Matt, feel pretty alone, questioning myself when you're on medication, when, your whole life, as I say, is taken from you. Am I a good person? Am I on the right path? What's going to happen to my physique? All of these questions we go through when we face something like surgery or injury, it's real. It is real. But what I learned during that time, and I actually surprised myself at how strong my mindset was, I'm no less of a person. Look, guys, if you're facing a challenge that means you cannot train, that you cannot do your steps, you are no less of a bodybuilder. Fuck what anyone else thinks. You can only do your best. You're a human being. And this is the thing, guys. We have feelings, we have thoughts. Yeah, okay, we do whatever it takes as a bodybuilder. Trust me, I take that to the nth degree. I absolutely do. But who am I? Who's Sarah outside of that? I'm a nice person. I'm an intuitive person, as I said to you at the start. I'm someone that wants to succeed in life. I'm someone that wants to help others. I'm not redundant. I'm not a victim because I needed to have surgery. I am still the same person that went into surgery, that came out of surgery. Yes, I'm compromised. Yes, I'm on my fucking ass and I can't hardly move. And I'm literally going to the toilet in a potty, right? This, it's hard. It is hard because I didn't imagine that happening. I absolutely did not. I put off this pain for 4 or 5 months thinking it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. And then it's a complex surgery that needs to take place and it needs to happen in 3 days' time. But during those moments where I'm having to go to the toilet in a potty, I can't even stand. I can't hardly do anything. I did not give up. Matt helped me, but I was hell bent on doing everything I could myself. And it's that mindset that gets us through. When we relate this to trauma in life, the things that happen, you remember at the start I said, this is on a scale. Something can happen to one person, another person, another person. We all have the different impact that it leaves. And every time we face traumatic challenges, a lot of the time, there is elements of building a thicker skin. So what happened to me as a 14-year-old, being homeless, not knowing what was going to happen, being a 14-year-old girl with absolutely nothing, walking the streets at night, scared, alone. That's the worst thing that's happened to me. So everything I've faced since then, the terrible times, the sexual abuse, the mental abuse, nothing's ever touched that. And that's my story, right? That's what's happened to me. And everything that's happened, like I say, since then has been, it's never going to be as bad as that. It's never going to be as bad as that. And I reference on the podcast tomorrow about the worst thing that could happen to me from all of this that has happened is to die. What's the worst thing? What do I need to fear? Death. Death is the worst thing that can happen, but I don't need to fear that because if I die, I die. And Lewis rightly said to me, the worst thing that could happen is you being back in that place of trauma. Again, something that I've thought about and it sat with me, that is the worst thing that could happen to me to be back there as that 14-year-old telling myself it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. I'm gonna get through this no matter what happens. And I can relate this to so many circumstances in my life, and we all love to hear stories, right? We all love to relate to people. I certainly do, and I'd imagine a lot of my listeners do, because that's why you listen, that's why you tune in. You've got to know me through the podcast. And those times, there's I guess for me, would I call it pivotal moments that I don't forget or memorable experiences? One of those experiences was when I was addicted to smoking weed and pot. I remember I'd have like £10 money wise for a whole week's worth of food shopping for me and my boyfriend at the time. And I'd make it work. I'd go into Iceland and we'd literally live on beans on toast. And when I look back, it was hard times. But I remember that something inside me said to me, "You're meant for more than this. Do not give up." And it's like there's something inside me, and you might be able to relate here. That's like, you do not give up. Right now, you're addicted to smoking pot. You've got no money and you're in an abusive relationship. Do not give up. And through some strength, I don't know what that strength was. I guess I do now because it's led me here today, but I still would go to college. And I couldn't, this is how bad the addiction got. I could not leave the house without taking a toke on a joint. And that would be searching under sofas. That would be trying to find even the smallest amount of a joint to take one toke before I could leave the house. And I guess until you've lived that life, maybe it's hard to relate to that. Maybe you can from listening. But I then get to college and I still did all my college courses. I still did everything I needed to do. All day I'd be thinking I need to get back for my fix, right? That's how addictions work. And I know there's listeners that have been there, that have been addicted to drugs or alcohol or whatever that may be. And that something inside me led me to doing the personal trainer award at college, my third free education course, because, free education in the UK till you're 18. I believe it's still like that. I don't know. Now I'm in my 30s, but that personal training course led me to bodybuilding. Bodybuilding led me to the podcast. Bodybuilding led me to meeting many of my close friends. Bodybuilding nourished me into being a coach and nourished me to where I am today. So even though I couldn't leave the house without my fix, I still went to college and led me to, I'd never even stepped in a gym before I did the PT course. It was purely because I did a massage course that then led me to an intrigue in nutrition and how that could complement what I did with massage and being a massage therapist. And I ended up doing a PT course, absolutely blagged my way through it, the interview, because you were meant to have been a gym goer. You were meant to have a base knowledge of, nutrition, exercise, etc. And I knew fuck all. What I could do was blag my way through it. And as I say, that's led me here today. And I did not give up. However, what I did do is stay in a victim mindset. Absolutely. Until around 2.5 years ago, I was absolutely a victim. No doubt in my mind. Because I told myself I deserved to be a victim. I did not deserve to be happy. I was worthless. And when I relate this to my bodybuilding journey, I've referenced this before, no accolade, no title took that pain away. I won Miss Universe in Mexico. The next day, I was in the gym doing cardio and thinking, what's next? I can be better. I'd won the pivotal, that was a pivotal moment in my bodybuilding career. I'd won Miss Universe for fuck's sake, and still I was not good enough. I wanted to experience the suffering and the pain. So I'm up at 5 a.m., I'm on that cross trainer, and I'm going absolutely for it. I was not good enough. And that's what I feel is personally for me the upsetting part of, and it's upsetting in some respects, but I can talk about it now. So this is valuable to talk about because, as I say, we all like to listen to stories. But that mindset of being a victim, that translated into being able to suffer, being able to do whatever it takes. You tell me what to do and I'll fucking do it. And that's not me bragging or trying to be better than anyone else. Absolutely. I have no problem with suffering because of the things that have happened to me leading up to being able to be a good bodybuilder. And where I say it's upsetting, if I could have lifted that trophy in this mindset, in this life, in this chapter of my life, it would be a very, very different story. It would be a very, very different feeling because I can see it now. I can feel it now. I lifted that trophy. I was so proud of myself. And I looked in the audience and I saw my ex-husband there and it took it all away because I then had to go up to the room with him and be back to the life that no one knew about. No one knew about my behind closed doors life. Absolutely. When I walked away from my ex-husband, everyone was surprised because I didn't let anyone know. For me, if I'm staying, if I'm putting up with what was going on in that marriage, I shouldn't be moaning about it. I don't need to go into work and tell everyone my life is so shit. He is horrible to me. He does X, Y, and Z because I'm not prepared to do anything about it. And until I was, personally, and you could maybe think of this as pride, right? Or, the brave face. And I can still put on a brave face, right? Like things will happen that hurt me, things will happen that are upsetting in my life still now. You know, I'm not some superhuman. I'm not someone that doesn't get upset and take things to heart. But this is where we can we can get upset about things. We can let things affect us. But how long do we let that last? And that's important because the impact of anything that happens in your life, letting that carry on, that's when we fall back into being a victim. And that's the thing, right? If things are hard in your bodybuilding endeavor, when it's really fucking tough, I've touched on this. We either moan about it and say, why has this happened to me? Poor me. Or we go, this is it. This is bodybuilding. This is competitive bodybuilding. I am here for it. I'm here for it. Because there's certain times where we are challenged to the absolute max, right? If this is your first time doing it, it's like fucking hell. This is a world of pain. Does it get easier? Does it get better? That's going to be dependent on your journey. I think in some regards it gets easier to tolerate because we know what to expect. But there's just these mad moments where you look back and think, what? The episode where I did this one's for you. I spoke about when I had to go to hospital 4 weeks out and I had my arm in a sling. And that's I reference every single time I prep, and we've got to actually look at this factually, right? the more you're going into a deficit, the more you're going to be at risk for injury, for illness, for things to happen. You're vulnerable. And every time, 4 to 6 weeks out, something happens. Who knows what it will be next time? But I remember when I competed in the Pro League in Portugal and I had an accident on my push bike. I was out delivering Christmas cards. Seems apt for this episode because we're approaching the Christmas period. And I literally slid on some black ice. The bike went underneath me and it was terrible. It was so bad. And when I traveled to go and compete, I had my arm in a sling. When I got to the airport, I was like, okay, so as soon as I get off this flight, I'm going to take my sling off because I don't want anyone to see that I'm in a sling because other competitors might think I'm weak. And I don't want anyone thinking I'm weak. And I'm in so much pain, but I'm like, absolutely not. No one's going to know. No one's going to know. And no one knew. And these are the things we do, right? 6 weeks out, previous prep, I fractured my ankle. I was posting on social media and I fell down a pothole, the loudest crack. I carried on walking and I was like, shit, this is fucking painful. And I was like, I know as soon as I get home and take this boot off, my ankle's going to swell up like a fucker. And I know I'm not going to be able to do steps. So I carried on for 90 minutes. I walked for 90 minutes, got home, and I was like, shit, this is so painful. Took the boot off, my ankle exploded. It was huge. For the rest of the prep, I couldn't do steps. And it is what it is, right? It is what it is, and I made it work. I was still able to compete. But it is wild these things we do because it's certainly not normal, right? It's certainly not normal. And I often think this, where does this come from within us, guys? Like what is it? For me, it's trauma. It sure is, you know. When I fracture my ankle, when I end up in a sling, when I am literally crippled in pain with my back, as we know in peak week, it ramps up how many check-ins we're doing and how much is expected of us. At the tail end of a prep, you won't see it. Matt will see it. I can't hardly move. And why do I then do it again? Why do I keep doing it? Because I don't want to give up. And that truly is, it's, I don't want to give up. I never want to give up. And yes, this time away from stage, I'm learning a lot. And it's been great to step away to actually and mainly go to Thailand to be able to clear my mind, to be able to rewrite who I am and that meaning who's Sarah, be able to work on my relationship with food and myself, and to be able to, and this is the big thing, enjoy a growth phase. Because I never enjoyed growth phases. I hated getting bigger. And I've always been known as Sarah fucking goes savage in prep. Sarah can prep. Sarah preps every year. And was that scary to step away from that person that steps on stage, over 10 years, 7 times and does 7 competitive seasons? Yeah. Did that sit okay? Mm, it was hard. It was hard. But what I've realized is I'm more than being a shredded person on stage. What I can share on the podcast and with my clients, what I can do by setting an example of committing to a long growth phase, albeit obviously it has been down to surgery, etc., has extended it. But that's proving to me that I can sit in this phase and be content and still feel validation every goddamn day because I'm more than prep. And when I diet down next, which has now been timelined for April 2025, let's see what I look like, guys. Because I said this on my stories yesterday. that I could not think of anything worse for me having competed 7 seasons, 12 years as a bodybuilder, for me to look worse, right? And that's important to me because it's absolutely not okay. So until I do that diet, it is full focus on growing as much as I can and being able to really work on committing to this growth phase from this point because as I mentioned, I can only just about lift the load across both legs evenly. And now this next 6 months, this is where I want to see what I can do because I can now push that little bit more. Because if you've had surgery, you'll understand fatigue is higher just on a day-to-day basis, right? Just from doing normal things. It's hard. It's very hard. And that was months and months and months. So I'm just in this stride where I'm like, next 6 months, this is going to be fucking epic. And I'm very, very excited to share it with you guys and continue sharing all of my lessons. And what I want to end it on here today is that tomorrow's episode is the first one of the trauma series, and that's going to be fed into the competitor journey series. That's going to be continuing. I've still got many guests lined up that are going to be sharing their journeys and stories. And then I'm going to have the trauma episodes sprinkled in throughout the rest of the competitor series to bring guests on to talk about their own trauma, how they've dealt with it, how they've had treatment, what are the things that they've learned from the traumatic things they've faced. And I hope that, I guess it would be weird of me to say I hope you enjoy the episodes, but again, there's cathartism, isn't there, in listening and the enjoyment's different. It's not, walking along singing and dancing, but sometimes you can get enjoyment from, as I said earlier, listening to stories and learning about different people and how they deal with things. And I really do hope that this direction of the podcast is working for you guys and you're enjoying what I'm doing. Obviously, with the podcast, this is me. I'm guiding the ship. Every guest I get on, every episode I record, let me tell you, a lot goes into it. And actually, I'll leave it on this one. I got asked, how does it feel being a hero to so many? That that question is surreal in itself. Because certainly, you know, I'm not one to take compliments per se. I sometimes find it quite awkward. But getting to the gist of that, what I do is purely for a passion to help you guys. I don't make money from the podcast. I actually pay for the podcast. A lot of my free time, which is classed as work, is the podcast. I've certainly got a mission going into next year to actually find what I enjoy outside of work, coaching, bodybuilding, podcast, because I've let my own hobbies go. I've let my own things outside of bodybuilding go, and that's something I need to bring back, right? But that is an example of I will work tirelessly for you guys. And it's as simple as that, what I pour into the podcast, it's it's truly special to me. When I speak to you guys, when you reach out, that's what fuels me, you know? That's all I need to keep going. And I hope that we can continue to reach more people around the globe. I will absolutely do my utmost, trust me, to keep getting the guests on that are of the quality that I have already. I'm at this point where it's like I'm brushing with people, I'm speaking with people, I'm making friendships with people in the bodybuilding space that are hugely respected. And there's a reason for that because I will never give up. So thank you guys for your support. And I look forward to creating more episodes for you. As always, if anyone wants to reach out with episode ideas, guest ideas, anything like that, please do let me know. And I will leave it there today and speak to you real soon.